So last week we had a really an extraordinary insight from the Chazon Ish about lowlives. This is something that in the English language, and I think just generally speaking, when you speak about someone and you consider them a lowlife, it's viewed as a derogatory term. Now, don't get it wrong. It's always a derogatory term, but it's not necessarily meant to insult somebody. This is simply a more of a status of where a person is, rather than trying to insult them to be something that they're really not. So the Chazon Ish gave us insights on what low lives really are and how to fix it is going to be discussed tonight. But of course, one of the most critical parts of any solution is to identify the problem, because many times you'll have different people doing different things, and when you identify that what they're doing is problematic, usually the average person will deny their fault, will deny their responsibility as a predisposition, as a defense mechanism, where they simply don't want to admit that they did something or they are doing something that's wrong. So, for example, when we highlighted some of the horrible statements made by Dennis Prager just a couple of years ago, where he, on one end, he's representing himself as the example of what Jews are, here in the English-speaking world, and he is in essence the representation of the Jewish people, while at the same time he is admitting that he is desecrating the Shabbat. He is admitting that he is violating the Torah, and really has no qualms about it. 1 second, we had a power outage. Let me just. All right, we got some people. It's back. Here we go. All right, very good. Okay, let's get our train of thought back again. B'ezrat Hashem. All right, so the Chazon Ish gave us a completely new definition, a new way to look at what a low life is. Simply put, until now we thought of a low life as simply a horrible person, a criminal, somebody that's not exactly one you want to associate with, certainly not somebody you want to be. But at the same token, the Chazon Ish is not here to insult anybody. He's here obviously to teach us how to remove different lowly character traits that we ourselves have, how to refine ourselves, how to become better quality people, how to become a better light to ourselves, better light to our families, needless to say, a better light to the nations. This is not only something that helps Jews, this is also something that could certainly help non-Jews. But if a person denies the problem, a person simply doesn't think that they are a lowlife, they don't think that they have anything wrong with them, they view themselves from a arrogant standpoint of thinking that everything that they're doing is perfect, then obviously this is a person that you can't help. So the first part of curing a problem, regardless of what problem it is identifying the problem, identifying that there is a problem. But at the same token, no one wants to view themselves as a lowlife. So that's what we spent nearly 2 hours identifying last week, of trying to figure out, what is this lowlife? What is it? Somebody that's related to me? Is it somebody that I know? Is it sometimes me? Is it you? Who is this lowlife? So these types of words can sometimes confuse a person to the point where they don't want to listen, they don't want to educate themselves, because they already have this negative connotation of what something is, and immediately they arrive at a conclusion. So this is one of the things that the sages teach us, never to jump to conclusions. And a person needs to know that when it comes to character trait development, it's not a pleasant process. It's not something that is going to make you feel good immediately, but rather it's something that's going to make you feel good after you've actually achieved something. So similar to hard work is never enjoyable until you complete it. And one of the things that the Chazon Ish taught us last week is that These lowlives literally could be the people we see when we look in the mirror. They could be people that we love. They could be people that we care about. And of course, there are different levels of being a lowlife. There are certain people that are obviously horrible people, and there are certain people that certainly have weaknesses. Weaknesses that put them in a low state where, throughout the majority of the day or the week or the year, this person is, generally speaking, a fantastic person, but if you cross them in a certain way, if you say something to them, if you command them in some way, and they're not a person that likes to listen to any type of criticism, then the lion comes out, or perhaps maybe the pig comes out roaring, and they simply act like animals. So of course a person needs to know their own weaknesses in order to solve them. Now, aside from that, a person needs to understand that there is a cure. There is a cure to any type of negative character trait development, negative character trait, but it requires development. It requires a person working on that issue. If a person ignores it and thinks that in time this is going to be resolved, he's simply, living an illusion. I see this Facebook thing is doing the problem again. Okay, we're just going to ignore it and just continue. So, the key is to understand that when the Chazon Ish is coming to us and telling us that there is this lowliness that a person can have that is brought upon themselves, by their own actions, he's in essence telling you, this is the problem, now here's the solution. So, the first thing that a person needs to have in order to cure any problem is a motivation. Motivation, they have to have a motivation. Now, what motivation does a person have to have in order to remove this lowliness? Now, of course, you need to know that any type of lowly character, whether it's a lying, cheating, being, insulting to people, being intimidating, enjoying to scare people, enjoying to take advantage of people, enjoying to hit people. All of these things are certainly not only lowly characters, but they're also sins against the Torah, which a person is going to regret when they arrive at the Beit Din of heaven and they're judged for each one of these actions. But in addition to that, a person also needs to know that when they're removing these negative character traits from their life, with each and every single step, not even completely achieving it, but even a positive step in the right direction, where they're removing part of their anger, they're removing part of their stinginess, they're removing part of their arrogance. Each part will bring a certain amount of light, spiritual light, onto that person that will allow that person to become a better vessel for Hashem to bring His sustenance of happiness, of money, of joy, of all the good things that Hashem wants to give to a person. Once a person is purifying themselves as a vessel, he's now allowing himself or herself to become that vessel that is able and capable of actually accepting more of this good from Hashem. So the benefits of removing this lowliness from ourselves is not only in the eternal world, which is in essence everything, but it's also in the world that we view as everything, because the average person out there doesn't really consider heaven or hell as part of their day-to-day argument. The average person out there considers their life here on this earth, in this shell of a body, as really everything. Hence the reason why they invest all of their time into making money, into chasing, all types of materialism, into trying to get the most amount of possessions in this world, because they feel like as if they're going to enjoy these things forever. Also the reason why people become suicidal. Because they feel like whatever negative thing happened in their life, whether it's a traumatizing experience that was brought onto them by evil people, or a traumatizing experience that a person brought onto themselves. Either way, they feel like this negative feeling is going to be something permanent, and therefore they want to end it, thinking that life ends with this life. And anyone that has watched the movie that we've made, Gehenom or Chibut HaKever, knows that this is as far from the truth as it gets. Life doesn't end after this life. Life in this world ends after this life, but eternity continues. What that eternity will look like all depends on what your actions were in this life. Now, the Chazon Ish told us that this spiritual light that Hashem wants to give us is something that is either going to be darkened by the lowly actors, or is going to be, going to be allowed to literally go through this vessel that Hashem has directly to each and every single person, and allow you to have all of the joy that's in this world. Now, when you see these Torah scholars that we had today, these over 500 of them learning Torah, and you see their faces while they're learning, you see their faces after they complete that study session, you would think, oh, this is the first time that they've learned Torah, in their life. But in reality, this is what they do every day. They don't do it as a group in that fashion with that particular goal, but in essence, they learn every single day, anywhere from 10, 12 hours a day, sometimes more, sometimes less. But generally speaking, this day was not any different than any other day. Meaning that this sense of achievement is something that they could literally attain every single day. Yet if you go to work and you see, somebody that's in a business that you work in that's very successful, perhaps he makes, $100,000 a year, $500,000 a year, $5 million a year, whatever, everybody in their own level. You don't necessarily see that level of happiness and content in those very same people. Perhaps you see the pictures that people want to show you the illusion that they're happy, in the Hollywood pictures that everybody has. But the people that really know what's going on behind the scenes, they know that many times the people that have the most amount of material end up becoming the most miserable people. The opposite of what these Torah scholars have. What's the difference? The difference is that this vessel that a person made themselves, that connects to Hashem, is not accepting the sustenance of happiness and joy in life. They may be accepting the money, but money without blessing is a curse. So the Chazon Ish is in essence trying to tell us that if we need a motivation to remove lowliness from our life, whether it's lowliness in other people or lowliness in ourselves, we have all the motivation in the world. What? That motivation is attaining happiness. Every single person out there on planet Earth is looking to attain happiness. They may think they'll achieve happiness by having more money, or having more possessions, more cars, more houses, more women, more men, more toys, whatever it is that they're looking for. But the truth is that anyone that's old enough and wise enough will tell you none of these material possessions will ever bring you happiness. So how do you attain happiness? Happiness is something that you're gifted by God if you've made yourself into a certain vessel that is capable of tolerating happiness, if you will. So the Chazon Ish now is going to take us to the next segment and trying to give us the cure. And the reason why I say try is because he can give us the cure, but the cure is only going to work for those few people that actually take it upon themselves. The source of lowliness, this baseness of the spirit, can be found in the spirit and not in action. The lowly actions are expressions of the baseness of the spirit, and the actions that bear evidence to the baseness differ. Some of them are coarse and earthy, such as eating in public and riding a horse through the city streets. Some of them are not so noticeable, such as using coarse expressions and low language, or being quick to curse or berate people, lacking a sense of shame and speaking out insolently, not being afraid to deny what's true or to lie, not feeling responsible for a person's own words or their speech. Such people are not worthy of learning the aspects of Mussar, of moral teachings, which are based on subtlety and fine points, and they will never find a cure to their corruption in the study of Mussar. Now, of course, we're going to explain everything we just read in simple terms. So the Chazon Ish first starts in telling us, where does this lowliness come from? Where could we find it? And quickly he tells us that lowliness is not something that you can see on a person. It's not something that's quickly identifiable. It's not something that, a person has a certain look and therefore you know that he's a lowlife. No. This is something spiritual, where you can actually see two different people. One of them looks like their head is proud and high, and they may not necessarily be such a lowly character. On the other hand, you could see somebody with their head down and, looking as if they're a lowly, humble person, but in reality, that's the bigger lowlife. That person is the problem. But he expresses his loneliness differently than the other guy. So he's telling us, first and foremost, that loneliness is not something that you can find physically, it's something that's in the spirit. And the actions that person takes are the expression of that lowliness that's coming from the spirit. These actions show themselves differently. Some of them are coarse and earthy. What does that mean, coarse and earthy? He gives us a couple of examples. He says a person that is simply has animalistic behavior and doesn't even think twice before acting such way. He gave a couple of examples that we discussed in depth last week. One of them was eating in public. Now, of course, if you go to a restaurant and you have a certain section that you're eating, and you're not one of these people that eats like a pig and just, throws your hand everywhere, and, there's a simply lack of manners, assuming you go into your corner, wherever that eating corner is, and you eat politely, there's no problem with that. The problem is when a person feels that they could make any place their restaurant. They simply decide that this bench in the park is their restaurant. Or they decide that while they walk to work, or while they're on the bus to work, they could just take a sandwich and start eating in front of people. This is animalistic behavior. Just like a bull or other types of animals are constantly eating, he feels like he can constantly eat. Why? He's hungry. He feels that if he's hungry, he should be able to eat. This is animalistic behavior. Why? Because if a person starts thinking what everyone else is going to see, immediately that person is going to realize that that's not necessarily something that they want to see. No one wants to see somebody else eat, especially if they're eating something with sauces, something with all types of juices, something that's very big, sometimes even bigger than the face. It's not a pleasing sight. I don't know why people, for whatever reason or another, don't notice this, but the reality is that people are so clueless of this that many times you have different commercials or different types of advertisements or movies or whatever it is, where they actually show people eating. Now, this is not exactly a appealing thing. I know that psychologically it could sometimes make another person hungry, but at the same token, if we are trying to improve ourselves, this is certainly not the way. So a person that takes other people's viewpoint of them and realizes that if I am a servant of God, if I am someone that wants to look respectable, if I am somebody that wants to carry myself in with the best possible appearance, eating in public is not going to be the way I'm going to do it. Because if you look at anybody that had a respectable position in society throughout all of history, you'll know that this is also something that they applied to themselves. This is the reason why, generally speaking, you're never going to see a president or a king of any country eating in public. You're never going to see pictures of them eating. You may have seen pictures of food in front of them, but you're not going to see them eating. Because one of the biggest nightmares that a public person typically has, especially a person of power, is if something falls on their shirt and makes a stain, or if something falls on their face and causes them embarrassment. So this is not such a foreign idea for people that care about what the public views themselves at. Now, in today's world where people don't care about themselves and they expose their own shame to society on purpose, obviously this is the opposite of what reality has been throughout all of the generations. Hence the reason why the Gemara says in the end of Masechet Sotah, page 49b, it says that at the end of days before Mashiach comes, chutzpah tizgeh, where there's the insolence, the chutzpah of people is going to be much greater than others, than other generations before it. So a person that doesn't care about eating in public is simply a person that doesn't care about how they're viewed publicly. And if they take the Torah into account, then they'll have to realize, as we said last week, a person that acts this way cannot be used as a witness in a Jewish ceremony. So if, let's say, for example, he has family members that want to get married, and he is known as a person that eats in public on a regular basis and doesn't care. He walks around with a sandwich on a regular basis. He eats in public on a regular basis. He's just one of these people that acts no different than a horse. Acts no different than a pig in one of these little farms where whatever you throw at it, he eats. That person cannot be used in a Jewish ceremony. Why? Because that person does not have the mannerisms necessary for them to represent the Jewish people in such a holy event. Now, this means they can't be a witness in a Jewish ceremony of a wedding. They can't be a witness in a Jewish court. They can't be somebody that you can rely on. So we see that this type of behavior actually is could be very damaging to a person's life without them even realizing. Another example that the Chazon Ish gives, and he gave it last week as well, is a person that's riding their horse through the streets. Now, of course, the average person today has no idea what we can do with riding a horse through the streets, because people, generally speaking, today don't ride horses unless they're in the Middle East or some other countries that still have this. But this is something you have to compare to people that, ride their cars really fast. I remember when I was a kid, there was always at least one or two kids every night that would zoom through the streets, making as much noise with their cars as possible, blasting their music, stomping on their brakes to make sure that everybody knows that they have a fast car and the brakes work, and they're making all types of streaks and they make racing. This is animalistic behavior. This is what we compare the horse riding in the middle of the streets to, where a person is obnoxious enough to do something in an inappropriate place, something that you can do anywhere else. You could do it on a highway, you could do it on a racetrack, you could do it anywhere else, but they choose to do it specifically there for the sake of getting attention, for the sake of getting people to notice that they exist. This is also a lowly type of behavior.